Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Quinn here, Valhalla Outfitter. You can always check out original content at valhallaoutfitter.com, and the store is at shop.valhallaoutfitter.com. You won't find this in the store, but you can always go check it out for all your outdoor adventure needs, and hopefully we have something you want. Usually that's what this channel's content is covering, is mostly outdoor gear, equipment, things to get you in the great outdoors. But this is also something that interests me, and so I thought it may also be something of interest or useful to you. Consolidating a watch collection got down to where I think I'm going to have one watch, go anywhere, do anything, one watch collection, maybe two, and then a beater, but significant consolidation. And as part of that process, contenders for the go anywhere, do anything include this, which is the brand new Tudor Black Bay 54. It's been doing an excellent job keeping time, about +2 seconds a day, COSC certified, true to the original oyster print Submariner dimensions in 1954 with a small-ish 37 millimeter case size and a 45.9 measurement lug to lug, but it does retain 20 millimeter bracelet. Another nice thing about this is it does come with the T-Fit clasp system for on-the-fly adjustment. Now, I was coming from a place where I was wearing larger dive watches, 39 to 41 mils basically, and I wondered if this was maybe slightly too diminutive of a jump. So I did take delivery of the Black Bay 58. So I thought I would compare these two for you, so you could maybe make an informed decision if you were torn between the two. They're both exceptional for starters. We'll just start with that. You won't be disappointed with either one. Basically, if you want to jump right to the spoiler, I would say it just comes down to personal preference, and I would say that if you are intrigued with or enamored with the 54, if you were going to make an addition to your collection, it might make sense, but I don't know if the tweaks or improvements that they have made between the two would justify going out and making a switch, or the addition just based on those tweaks if you already have the 58. So this may be more useful for somebody who's shopping and is torn between the two. Obviously, the 58 is slightly larger from the case perspective in that it comes in at 39.5. I really thought, I wouldn't have ordered it if I didn't think that it was a contender and might actually fit me better at 39.5. Frankly, I would have liked it if it was 39.5 and remained at 46-ish on the lug-to-lug measurement. They claim it's 47, but really it pushes the envelope at 47 and is like 47.9 mils. So the case size is as big as a Omega 41 millimeter, the Seamaster 300 Heritage, and you're only gaining a couple mils on the case size. Whereas at 37 mils on the 54, the case size is 45.9. Another significant difference in the measure if you look at the sides. Now, the BB58 is not really a fat watch, and I think that it comes in at about 11.9 thickness. However, when you compare that to the 11.24 of the 54, it really does make an apparent difference. And part of that is because that almost, I think the entirety of that full mill comes right out of that steel in the middle. And these have, since the release of the 41 millimeter version, these have been accused of being a little bit slab-sided. The BB58 certainly was thinner than the 41, but now that we are down to 11.24 millimeters on the BB54, it is just downright svelte, and it wears flat and kind of melts into the wrist. The other components that are a little bit different on the 54, you do have the T-Fit clasp, which allows for on-the-fly micro adjustments. You do not get that here. You get 1, 2, 3 micro adjustments on the clasp, but you would need to use your spring bar tool to adjust. Not the end of the world if that's what you're used to, but after experiencing the T-Fit clasp and the glide lock system on the Omega, I don't know if I would ever go back to a watch that doesn't have it. It really is that handy. You lose the red triangle on the bezel. For me, that's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Not a big deal. Also, you'll notice that the lume marker on the seconds hand has become a lollipop as opposed to the snowflake that is on the old version. Also, while they both have a gilt dial, markings on the bezel have matched the case on the 54 as opposed to the gilt markings that you see here on the 58. Yeah, again, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Just kind of depends on how much bling factor. I would say that I think that the red triangle really does kind of set that pip off, but part of that could be that that is a gold accent around the pip as opposed to this steel or silver colored here on the 54. And then lastly, when you look at the bezel and the timing markers, the 54 is absent the minute markers on that 15-minute, the T-minus 15-minute countdown, whereas the 58 has them. They both have a well-executed boxed sapphire crystal. They are both waterproof or water resistant down to 200 meters. One other thing that I noticed is while on the 54, clearly the dial size is smaller, there's a lot of negative space on the 39.5 millimeter variety. It just feels like there's a whole lot of real estate there that I guess after you look at the 54, you kind of just say, well, maybe it doesn't necessarily, I don't necessarily need it, right? From a utility function, the other another important thing to note is the size of the crown. They both have the Tudor rose engraved in the crown. No crown guard is present on either, but you notice that the crown on the 54 really it snugs right up to the case of that watch, and on the 58 it does stick out and is a bit more pronounced, almost like a big crown. Now the reason for that, if you know some of the history and heritage of these watches, Rolex released the 1953 Oyster Prince Submariner, and then a year later the 54 came out. This is the Oyster Prince Submariner by Tudor. This is very true to its roots. The French, I believe, put in a big order for these things, and the French noticed that when they had their gloves on, they were having trouble manipulating the crown. They couldn't get it with their dive gloves on, so asked for a change to be made. So sometime between 1954 and 1958, we saw the crown get bigger so that it would be easier to manipulate with gloves on, right? So that's why you see it larger here. I would mention it is perceptibly easier to manipulate and grab. However, how often do you need to do it? Now, full disclosure, this 54 is running about 2 seconds fast on a daily basis. So typically in the morning, if I grab it, I unscrew the crown and I give it a few winds just to kind of top up the engine. And then I pull the crown guard, or pardon me, pull the crown out to the set position and then count to about 1000 and push it in, and I know that I've given the watch time for the world to catch up. So I actually do use the crown pretty much every day. At first, but I don't have to, right? I could just leave it for a week and then adjust it by 10 seconds. Part of that is just me, and I like seeing how precise instruments are and how they behave when they're stored in different positions. So it could be a shortcoming of mine that I manipulate it more than I necessarily need to. However, if you do change time zones a lot and you're going to be setting your watch a lot, that larger crown may be handy. Overall, it just feels like the 54 is a little bit more elegant, a little bit more refined, a little bit less blingy without the gilt, without the pop of red. It's a little more streamlined, balanced, and symmetrical without those countdown minute indices. Both bezels are nice and perform well. And on the 54, you get the added benefit of the T-clasp. Or pardon me, yeah, the T-fit with the quick adjust micro glide. So my wrist is 6 3/4 inches, fluctuating up to 6.96 inches depending on heat, humidity, elevation, and I have 50 millimeters across the flat of the top of my wrist, and here is the 54. It sits nicely in the center of the wrist without dominating, but because the lug-to-lug measurement does come in at 46 mils, it still has the wrist presence to give it some understated attention, right? Recently on a trip to Alaska where we had temperature fluctuations and humidity fluctuations and elevation changes, there I think are 8 mils of travel built into that clasp, and I used all 8 millimeters in one day, and the watch was always perfectly comfortable. I will say, just picking this thing up, when you look at look at them next to each other, it feels a lot more chunky, right? It looks a lot more chunky, and that's fascinating because the measurements wouldn't indicate that it should be that much more chunky. You do get that safety deployment clasp there, so you don't lose anything. Again, 6 3/4 inch wrist that sometimes fluctuates up to 7, and that's what you get there. They're both fine watches. Either one works. I really wish that for the 39.5 millimeter case size that they would have shaved a tiny bit more off of the lug-to-lug measurement, maybe found a way to slightly reduce some of the negative space that are on the dial face, but I may just be a little bit biased because I'm used to wearing this 54, right? It's recency bias. However, it's plain to see that it is quite a bit less chunky, both kind of in the porkiness department and in that lug-to-lug. So anything up to, if you're between 6.5 inches and 7.5 inches, 8 inches on your wrist, either one of these would be a fine choice. It's really kind of an interesting trick that they pulled with that 54 because, you know, when they're next to each other, it's clearly smaller, but then when it's on wrist, it doesn't necessarily wear that much smaller or feel that much smaller. So I think for me, probably the choice is going to be the 54 with kind of the refinements. If I already own the 58, I would probably continue to happily be a 58 owner and would not make an addition to the collection or make an adjustment to the collection to get rid of the 58 in favor of the 54. But if you're thinking about either one of them, the 54 just gets it all just right. The 58's really close. I personally don't necessarily care for that larger crown. The missing T-fit clasp system is kind of a bummer. It'd be nice if they had that. If it were just a little bit thinner and maybe just the tiniest bit less off the lug-to-lug measurement, that would help it. Also, the bezel edge just has a little bit more personality on the 54. So I think for me, the 54 is going to be the way to go. Again, nothing against the 58, a fine watch. If I already had one, I think I would happily keep it and continue to wear it. But the 54 just kind of takes everything that one more level of refinement to kind of be dressy diver that has just a little bit more pizzazz. For me, anyway, there is no wrong answer between either of these. They will both provide you with years and years of service, and I think you would be happy with either one. I hope this comparison kind of helps you understand the differences and the practical appearance differences when you're looking at them side by side. In this day and age of digital shopping, it's not always possible to do that, and we as consumers always want to have more information at our disposal as opposed to less. So hope this helps you make a decision. For me, I think it's going to be the 54, but I'd be happy either way. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye.